I went to HR to report my manager for harassment. I followed every protocol, filed every form, trusted the system completely. 3 days later, I walked past my manager's office and saw my confidential complaint, every word I'd written, printed out and sitting on his desk with notes scribbled in the margins. And that's when I realized the nightmare was just beginning.
I'd been at Meridian Consulting for 6 years. 6 years of early mornings, late nights, and consistently exceeding every metric they threw at me. I was a senior project analyst, and I genuinely loved my work. The company had always treated me well, until Derek Simmons became my department manager 18 months ago. Derek came from a competing firm with a reputation for being a hard charger. Upper management loved him because he talked a big game about efficiency and cost reduction. What they didn't see was what happened behind closed doors. It started small. Comments about my work that felt unnecessarily personal. He'd critique my presentations in front of clients, not about the content, but about my delivery, my appearance, my voice. Then came the isolation tactics. He'd schedule important meetings when he knew I had standing appointments. He'd reassign my projects to junior staff without telling me, then berate me for not staying on top of my workload. But the harassment really escalated about 8 months in. Derek discovered I was going through a divorce. I'd kept it private, but he found out through office gossip. Suddenly, my personal life became his favorite weapon. He'd make comments in team meetings, things like, "Well, I'm sure Marcus has time for this project since he's got nothing waiting for him at home anymore." Or he'd joke about how I should work weekends since, quote, "it's not like anyone's missing you." I tried to ignore it. I tried to be professional. But then he started documenting every minor mistake I made, building a case for something. I could feel it coming. The breaking point came during a quarterly review. Derek sat me down, closed the door, and spent 45 minutes telling me that I was a disappointment, not just professionally, but personally. He said men who couldn't keep their marriages together lack the discipline to succeed in business. He said he was considering whether I was management material anymore. I left that meeting shaking. I sat in my car for an hour, just trying to breathe. That night, I made a decision. I was going to do this the right way. I was going to trust the system. The next morning, I walked into human resources. The HR director was a woman named Patricia Chen. She'd been with the company for 12 years, and she had this warm, maternal energy that immediately put me at ease. Her office had motivational posters about integrity and respect. She offered me coffee and listened intently as I laid out everything. I told her about the comments about my divorce, about the public humiliation in meetings, about the veiled threats regarding my career. I had documentation, emails, timestamps of incidents, even a few audio recordings I'd made on my phone during meetings where Derek had crossed the line. I gave her everything. Patricia nodded sympathetically the entire time. She took detailed notes. She assured me that Meridian had a zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment and that my complaint would be handled with the utmost confidentiality. "This stays between us," she said, placing her hand on mine. "Derek won't know you filed this until we've completed our investigation. You have my word." I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months. I'd done the right thing. The system was going to work. For 2 days, everything seemed normal. Derek was his usual dismissive self, but nothing felt different. I started to hope that maybe, just maybe, this company would actually protect its employees. Then came day 3. I was walking past Derek's corner office on my way to the break room. His door was open about 6 inches, and I happened to glance inside. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. There, on Derek's desk, was a printed document. Even from the doorway, I recognized it. The format, the headers, the length. It was my HR complaint, the one Patricia promised would be confidential, the one that was supposed to be protected. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the handwritten notes on the margins, notes in Patricia's handwriting. I recognized her distinctive purple pen, the same one she'd used to take notes during my meeting. And the notes weren't investigation questions. They were strategic advice, things like deny, 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 document his attitude problems, build PIP case. I stood there, frozen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Patricia hadn't filed my complaint to protect me.
She'd handed it directly to Derek as ammunition.
Okay, I need to stop here because this is the moment where my entire worldview shattered. I'd trusted the system. I'd done everything right, and HR had literally handed my confidential complaint to the person harassing me. Subscribe if you think what Patricia did was a complete betrayal of her job. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had HR turn on you like this? Because what I did next, I'm still not sure if it was genius or career suicide.
I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Every reassurance Patricia had given me, every promise of confidentiality, every lie. By morning, I'd made a decision. If the system wouldn't protect me, I'd protect myself. I started documenting everything with renewed intensity, but this time, I wasn't documenting just Derek's behavior. I was documenting HR's betrayal. I took a photo of my complaint on Derek's desk through the crack in his door. I saved every email, every meeting invite, every interaction. 2 weeks later, Derek called me into his office. He had this smug smile on his face that I'd come to recognize. Sitting next to him was Patricia, holding a manila folder. "Marcus," Derek began, "we need to discuss some concerns about your performance and attitude." Patricia slid a document across the desk. It was a performance improvement plan, a PIP, the corporate death sentence, and the reasons listed, almost word for word, they were rebuttals to every complaint I'd made. I'd said Derek isolated me from projects. The PIP claimed I had difficulty collaborating with team members. I'd mentioned his public criticism. The PIP cited my defensive reactions to constructive feedback. They'd weaponized my own complaint against me. "You have 60 days to show improvement," Patricia said, not meeting my eyes. "Otherwise, we'll have to consider whether this role is the right fit." I sat there in silence for a long moment. Then I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. "I appreciate you both taking the time to meet me," I said calmly. "I'll review this document thoroughly." Derek looked almost disappointed by my reaction. He'd expected anger, tears, maybe a resignation on the spot. Instead, I walked out with the PIP under my arm and a plan forming in my mind. That evening, I contacted an employment attorney named Sandra Wu. She specialized in workplace retaliation cases. When I showed her everything, the original complaint, the photograph of it on Derek's desk, the PIP timeline, the margin notes in Patricia's handwriting, her eyes went wide. This is textbook retaliation, and the fact that HR colluded with your harasser, that's not just an ethics violation. Depending on your state's laws, this could be criminal. Sandra advised me to keep working, keep documenting, and most importantly, keep my head down while she built the case. So that's what I did. For 6 excruciating weeks, I showed up every day, completed every task on my PIP, and acted like nothing was wrong. Derek grew increasingly frustrated by my compliance. He'd set impossible deadlines, and I'd meet them. He'd criticize my work, and I'd thank him for the feedback. The less ammunition I gave him, the more erratic his behavior became. Then came the meeting that changed everything. Meridian's board held quarterly sessions with department heads. Normally, someone at my level would never be anywhere near these meetings, but Sandra had been busy. She'd sent a letter to the board's legal counsel outlining our evidence and requesting a confidential meeting. I'll never forget walking into that boardroom, the long mahogany table, the 12 faces staring at me. Derek was there, looking confused and angry. Patricia sat beside him, her face pale. Sandra stood and addressed the room. She presented everything: the original complaint, the photograph, the margin notes, the PIP timeline, showing clear retaliation. She even played one of my audio recordings where Derek explicitly mocked my divorce. But the piece that really sealed it was an email chain Sandra had obtained through legal discovery. It showed Patricia and Derek discussing how to neutralize my complaint before I'd even finished filing it. They'd planned the whole thing. Patricia had been feeding him information from day one. The chairman, a silver-haired man named Robert Harrington, looked like he might actually be sick. He called an immediate recess. When they returned, Derek and Patricia were asked to leave the room. The board offered me a settlement, significant money, glowing references, and an extended severance package. But I didn't take it, not yet. I had one condition.
I wanted a formal investigation into Patricia's handling of all HR complaints over the past 5 years. I wanted to know how many other employees she'd betrayed. The board agreed. The investigation took 3 months. What they found was staggering. Patricia had been funneling confidential complaints to favored managers for years. At least 14 other employees had been retaliated against after filing complaints. 7 had been terminated, 3 had forced to resign. The company was facing potential lawsuits from almost a dozen former workers. Patricia was terminated. So was Derek. Both faced potential criminal charges for conspiracy and fraud. The company settled with me for an amount I can't disclose, but let's just say I didn't have to work for a while. But here's what stays with me. That poster in Patricia's office, the one about integrity and respect, when they cleaned out her desk, they found a drawer full of other employees' complaints, dozens of them, all with notes, all betrayed. I think about those people sometimes, the ones who trusted the system like I did, the ones who didn't have an attorney like Sandra or the evidence I managed to gather, the ones who just lost. HR is not your friend. They exist to protect the company, not you. Document everything. Trust no one with your complaints until you have a lawyer, and never, ever assume confidentiality means anything. That's the lesson that cost me 18 months of my life. I hope my story saves someone else from learning it the hard way.
Thank you so much for sticking with me through this story. I know it was a lot, but I think it's important for people to hear what can really happen when you trust the wrong people at work. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. And if you've got your own workplace nightmare, whether it's a toxic boss, an HR betrayal, or anything in between, I want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments or send it in for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. You're not alone in this. Take care of yourselves out there.